Out of the tunnel here on College Football Live, hours away from the first college football playoff rankings for the 2025 season. Our experts on what they most want to see and are most interested in seeing. It was a rough week to be a road team that was ranked for one conference in particular. How might these bad results impact what the CFP says tonight? We'll dig in. And in the last 15 years, Auburn's won a national title and played for another. But now that the job is open again, how good is it today? We'll discuss that and more on College Football Live. And we welcome you inside with Tom Luganville, Sam Macho, and Heather Dinich, who's been covering the committee since its inception back in 2014. I'm Zubin Mehenti. 6 hours from now, where Heather and I are sitting, the official rankings will be released on ESPN, but it won't be long enough until Heather's camped out at the Gaylord Texan in Grapevine, taking track of the 12 men and women, former head coaches, former and current administrators, media members, former players that will help decide who gets into the playoff. Just a quick reminder on the newish format. The 12-team college football playoff is back in 2025 with a new and improved seeding procedure. Again this year, the playoff will feature the 5 highest-ranked conference champions plus the next 7 highest-ranking teams, as determined by the CFP selection committee. Now, new this year, the 12-team bracket will be seeded based solely on the selection committee's final rankings, with the 4 highest-ranked teams, whether they're conference champions or not, seeded 1 through 4 and receiving first-round byes. The 8 teams seeded 5 through 12 will play in the first round starting on December 19th, with the teams seeded 5 through 8 hosting home games. From there, the playoff will play out as dictated by the bracket, with no reseeding between rounds. The quarters and semis will be played at the traditional New Year's Six bowl game locations, followed by the national championship in Miami, where the college football playoff champion will be crowned January 19th, only on ESPN. So there you have the newish format. And before Mac Rhodes, the athletic director and vice chancellor of athletics at Baylor, is in the hot seat tonight, answering the questions from the guys and Heather. Let's put the guys and Heather on the hot seat first. The biggest thing you're looking forward to seeing tonight that kind of catches your eye is going to be what?
9 through 12-ish range. What do they do with that jumbled mess after Georgia Tech lost, Vanderbilt lost, Miami lost? How high can Notre Dame climb? How far does Miami fall? Do they care about the head-to-head, the fact that those teams played?
Right.
And where are Oklahoma and Texas? Because they also have a head-to-head result. So I'm very curious how they put that big picture piece of the puzzle together.
Okay, Tom, to you.
Yeah, I'm also very interested to see what they end up doing with Virginia. When you consider Virginia's schedule was the softest schedule in the ACC, they have a loss to NC State, which was considered an out-of-conference loss from a scheduling perspective. And then as you look down the road in the month of November, everybody's going to get caught up in this one set of the initial rankings. But look at the football that's got to be played, particularly in the SEC down the stretch. I think this thing could look so vastly different 4 weeks from now than it does right now. But I agree with Heather. The 9 through 12, what a muddy mess.
Well, y'all talking about 9 through 12 and 1 and 2. I'm looking at what happens at 13 to 25. Why do I say that? Because all of a sudden, you're going to have teams that have ranked wins now versus on this current AP poll that won't have ranked wins when it comes to the CFP selection committee's poll. And so a team like Washington right now that's ranked 24, are they going to be in the top 25? That might be one less ranked win for a team like Ohio State. So I want to see what happens after the first 12, the top 12. Maybe a team like James Madison's going to be in the top 25. Now you're talking about some of these group of 5 conference champions, the 5 highest rated conference champions. So I want to see what happens outside the top 12.
Let me tell you something. As somebody who sits there on Saturday night, Sunday morning, and does the whole top 25, you find yourself arguing about Iowa and Pitt and a 3-loss Tennessee, right? I mean, he's absolutely right. People don't understand how difficult it gets from 13 to 25.
Let me ask you this here. Fellas, hang tight for this. I want your perspective as well. You said a couple of weeks ago it wouldn't be out of the norm to maybe see a team like Texas A&M or Indiana that somebody's really deserves to be in the number 1 spot, even if the poll doesn't say that. You know these men and women and what they're looking at in the data as well as anybody, having been here on the ground floor. Should we be surprised in any way if somebody usurps Ohio State, or does somebody in your mind have a real consideration to be in the top spot besides the Buckeyes?
I would be surprised if it wasn't Ohio State. And I say that because I think right now they have the best combination of eye test and resume. This is what the selection committee is looking for. Ohio State is in the top 6 in offensive and defensive efficiency. They've got a great resume, but Texas A&M is number 1 in ESPN's strength of record metric. But that's not what it's all about. The committee considers a lot of other things. Like when you look at Alabama, they have 4 straight wins against ranked opponents, all of which could be CFP top 25 opponents. 2 of them were on the road. They consider all of those details.
Fair enough. So Ohio State, Heather thinks, could be there, will be there, but the case for other schools is there. Sam, I know you've been particularly bullish this year on Indiana. I know you guys probably both agree on Ohio State being in the top spot. Sam, let's begin with you. What is the line of separation between, let's say, Ohio State at 1 and anybody that comes beneath them? How wide or narrow is that gap?
Oh, it's extremely narrow. I love Heather's point about Indiana and how, yes, Ohio State does have a better metrics, but Indiana has a better win. Indiana has a 10-point win over the currently number 6 ranked team in Oregon. Now, that might change. Oregon might be ranked a little bit lower in the CFP's eyes, but Ohio State's best win is currently against, I think, number 13 ranked Texas. And so one of the arguments that can be made for Indiana is not only their better win, their double-digit win versus a top 10 team that currently Ohio State does not have in their resume, but also you look at the head-to-head of a team like Illinois. Indiana beat Illinois by, 50 points? And Ohio State beat Illinois by about 18. And so those are the things that I'm thinking about are the head-to-head matchups, the mutual matchups, right, the like opponents. And then also Indiana does have a better win. Now, last thing I'll just caveat it with is Washington is now ranked 24. Ohio State has that on their resume. So that is also a reason that Ohio State could be favored a little bit more.
Well, and Sam, look at the flip side of that. What you just referenced with Washington, how about Oregon and the Penn State game? When you look at when that game was played and where Penn State was in the national scope of college football, does the committee look at that for what it was in the moment? Or do they look at it now as Penn State looks like shattered glass on the highway? That's going to be very interesting because you can't sit here and say, well, Oregon went into that game and didn't really get overly excited about it because they figured in 5 weeks Penn State was going to be done. That's not how this works. So you have to give some credence to when the game was played. And you look at Texas A&M, they're another team that still has Missouri and Texas left on the schedule. They've only beaten 2 teams with winning records to this point. And finally, I wouldn't be surprised because I think Texas A&M, Alabama, Indiana, and Ohio State have separated themselves. If those 4 were to go on and play each other in the Big Ten and the SEC championship respectively, I would not be surprised, regardless of the outcome, as long as there wasn't a blowout, if those 4 teams weren't still the top 4 seeds in the college football playoff.
I just want to make two points here. One, with the common opponents. The selection committee does consider common opponents without incentivizing margin of victory. So, yes, they're looking for Indiana to establish themselves as the better team. But when Indiana is beating teams like they beat Illinois, once you get past 24, 25 points, you made your point. The selection committee isn't overly impressed by continuing to pile up the points. That's the first thing. The second thing, to Luke's point real quick about Penn State and the Oregon game, they will consider, to my understanding, the fact that James Franklin was on the sideline. That was a hostile environment. That was not a team that had yet come undone the way we saw after that. However, when you're talking about that Penn State win, it's not an elite win, right? It's not beating Georgia.
Right. The old saying used to be it's who you lose to, how you lose to them, but what happens when that team loses all their juice, and that's something that Tom and Heather touched on. Still to come here on College Football Live. Who's right back in this thing that we thought maybe was living on a razor's edge? And on the Plains, they'll be looking for another head coach. It's the fourth head coach in the SEC to go this season. The best insider in the sport. Here next.
College football.
Yeah. Reese and the gang will be right here in this studio to talk about it. We get you whet your appetite with a little bit of a primer. We mentioned big time wins and losses over the weekend that could affect the CFP picture. Tennessee falling to Oklahoma. That's a 3-loss. Vols off it now, but Oklahoma certainly looks like they might be in better shape. More on that in just a second. They did vault up 7 spots in the Associated Press poll. Texas also vaulted up 7 spots in the Associated Press poll, handing Vandy a defeat. Kind of feels like over the last couple of weeks, Texas has come back to life on offense. As good as it was for those two members of the SEC, for the ACC, it was a really tough weekend. Tech, undefeated this deep into a season for the first time since 1966, goes down under the lights at Carter Finley. And Miami, with again their late season swoon, this time losing to SMU in Dallas in a thrilling game in overtime. Just take a look at this from what I just mentioned. The 2 SEC teams I mentioned saw their chances go up. The 2 ACC teams I mentioned here have seen their chances plummet. So let's talk a little bit about this with respect to the ACC, because that seems like the league that took a lot of carnage this weekend. Let's start with you. Based upon the numbers on what you just saw on the screen and the results from the weekend, one thing about the ACC in your mind is pretty darn clear.
It looks like a one-bid league right now, and it looks like the ACC champion, which would lock up a spot, because the runner-up, I think, is going to have a really difficult time with 2 losses compensating for that with the rest of their schedule, because there just aren't any statement wins on there. And the reality of the situation is, even as an undefeated team, there were questions about the validity of Georgia Tech. And I promise you that within that selection committee meeting room this week, they talked about the officiating call that helped them beat Wake Forest. I guarantee that was part of the conversation.
I will say this, though, to the point of maybe a one-bit ACC team, Georgia Tech, they just lost NC State, hostile environment. Georgia Tech has a chance to play Pitt, which should be ranked. I think Pitt may be ranked in this first ranking, but they also have a chance to play Georgia at the end of the season. And so let's say for some reason Georgia Tech ends up losing in an ACC championship game. Well, a win over Georgia the week before could help bolster their case as being a team that might still make the college football playoff even if they don't win their conference.
Yeah, and Sam, I agree with Heather here, because, you know, you go back a week ago and it looked like there could possibly be 3 ACC teams. In the matter of one weekend, it's now gone down to 1. The question is, who are going to be the 2 teams in the ACC championship game? Because you still got Georgia Tech out there, Louisville out there. Duke is a problem and has to play Virginia. Virginia, Georgia Tech, and Miami do not play each other. And then you just referenced Pitt, who plays Georgia Tech and Miami. So this is going to be really interesting to see how this all unfolds, because those 6 teams right there that you see on your screen are so competitively balanced. And those teams have also won a lot of one-possession games with quality quarterback play. So I think we are far from the end of chaos in the ACC. The question is going to be, who are the 2 teams in the championship game?
Yeah, I want to quickly mention, you saw on your screen that Virginia has 1 loss, but just keep in mind as a caveat, this is something Heather's been telling us the whole time, that 1 loss was to NC State, but because the size of the ACC and all these leagues is morphed, that's technically a non-conference game. It's a little jarring when you see it. They've got the 1 loss, but technically they are undefeated in conference play, even though they lost to a league opponent. It's just a qualifier to know. It's time for our Capital One rewarding performance. And this is really interesting here, because we're going to spotlight a team that I don't think is getting a ton of attention here, despite how well they have played of late. And that is what Notre Dame has been able to do. 6 straight wins after starting 0-2. Now, it is worth mentioning that the 2 teams that Notre Dame lost to, both of them could end up making the college football playoff. That is something that's there. But we do find ourselves, Heather, in a situation where, of course, opening weekend, thrilling game between Notre Dame and Miami, which Miami won by 3 at the end.